See if it stays on now.
Okay. So the thing is that, why is it that, what is the reality of how we carry ourselves day by day, that it's important that we understand not only here, but here in the way we carry ourselves around the community. Do we really have compassion on the unlovable? And so I think the reason that the Lord put this on my heart, because sometimes I say, man, why don't we get some normal people to come? You know, I'm not saying that you're not normal. Don't get me wrong. But the thing is that, you know, we've had a lot of different people come in and visit us, and sometimes we just cringe when someone walks in and we go, okay, does that person have to be here today? Get rid of them so they don't come back. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like they're poison. Can you imagine if Jesus said to you, go somewhere else. You're not worthy of company with us. You could change your life first and then you can come back. Where would you be? You wouldn't come back for one thing, right? If someone told you we don't want you. Yeah? Because they're already thinking that in their head that nobody loves me. And I am rejected everywhere I go. And so what's the use? That's why people are checking out daily in our country. It's because they have no hope. They do not feel love. And we are the ones that should be reaching out like Jesus did and loving the unlovable. So I'm going to take you through a different situations where Jesus reached out to people. And the first one comes from Luke 17. So if you want to write down, if you're writing notes, this is the one about the leprosy. 10 lepers, right? And now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. Now if you look over at the map, right, Galilee, and Samaria is somewhere in between. And usually the people would go around Samaria because why? The Samaritans were half-breeds and the Jews hated the Samaritans. That was just about it. So as he was going into the village, 10 men who had leprosy met him, and they stood at a distance. Now, if you know the culture there, if you had leprosy, you could not live within the society because you were unclean. That's according to the law, that if you were unclean, you couldn't live with the rest of the people. So if you can imagine 10 men who had leprosy, it says they met him and they stood at a distance, so they kept their distance, right? They probably saying, unclean, unclean, because that's what they had to do, to notify people that were walking by that they were unclean. And they called out in a loud voice. Now, apparently, they must have known who this man that was coming, who that person was. Maybe they heard comments from people, the rumors that were going around that, hey, the Messiah's in town, you know? It says, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Now get this. When he saw them, he said, go show yourselves to the priest. Now, if you understand the culture again, if a person is healed of some kind of disease and they're unclean, they had to go not to the doctor, but to the priest, and the priest would say whether they were clean or unclean. So he said, go show yourselves to the priest. And as they went, the leprosy disappeared. They were cleansed. Can you imagine if you had some kind of disease and you had to stay away from everybody? You know, just like, okay, you had COVID. How many of you had COVID? You know, and what did you have to do? You couldn't mingle with society. So that kind of gives you the idea how they felt, right? And all of a sudden, you didn't have COVID. And you can go out and fellowship with people again. But you have to go see the doctor first. The doctor gave you the okay note to say you can go ahead and be with public again. And so as they went, they were cleansed. Okay, so can you imagine? They got leprosy, and they're doing what Jesus told them, go show yourselves to the priest. But why in the world did Jesus say, go show yourselves to the priest? Because they had leprosy. And if we go show yourselves to the priest, and you have leprosy, guess what? The priest is going to say, you're unclean, right? But something happened there. That they decided to listen to what Jesus said, and they made that journey to wherever it was to see, show the priest that, what? We didn't have leprosy anymore. They knew that the master said, do this, and if they did this, then they would be healed, and so they went. Now, there's more to the story, right? One of them, how many? Out of what?
10.
10, one. When he saw that he was healed, he didn't go to the priest. He went back to Jesus, praising God in a loud voice. And he threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. Now get this part, right? And he was a outcast, according to the Jews. He was a Samaritan. And Jesus asked, that's strange, right? You know, how many got healed? 10. And you're the only one that came back. What about the other Jews that got healed? Where are they? Right? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? So the way it's stated, it seems like there was only one Samaritan and the rest were Jews. You see, the thing is, if you understand what's going on here, you can kind of read between the lines. And because the Samaritan was the one that felt the outcast of the Jewish people, right? He felt unworthy. And yet Jesus says, he kind of lifted that man out of the mire and had compassion on him. And he says, you know, look at this guy, this foreigner. He came back to thank God for his healing. And then he said to him, rise and go. Your what? Your faith has made you well. Now what do you think happened to the other 9? It doesn't say. But they probably were healed, but there was more healing with the Samaritan person because he had faith. Enough faith to say, well, I'm not going to go to the priest. Why go to the priest? I can go to Jesus and thank him for what he has done in my life. Wow. You see, when people who are down and out come to a relationship with Jesus, their lives are changed forever. So the other story is, you remember Jesus told them to go on the other side, and so they went out in the ocean, and all of a sudden there was this big storm, and they get all scared again. And apparently there's a lot of storms on the sea, and I don't know, sometimes it's hard for me to comprehend a sea, and I don't know, I've been on a boat where there's a storm that came up, and I was pretty scared, so I can kind of relate to them. But Jesus ends up walking on the water, and Peter walks on the water and starts sinking. You bit of faith. If Peter had a little faith, can you imagine the rest of them that stayed in the boat? And so they see Jesus doing all this miraculous thing, and then they come, and then when he arrived at the other side of the region of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met him. Now it's really significant that they were coming from tombs. Can you imagine? We know that the thief comes in to kill, steal, and destroy, and hang around the dead, right? If you understand the spiritual realm of this, Jesus came to bring life And so there's no way that he'd hang around the tombs, right? Because he's the giver of life. But the devils and cohorts will hang around the tombs. So 2 demon-possessed men were coming from the tombs, met him, and they were so violent that no one could pass that way. Can you imagine? How many ever see a demon before? You ever see a demon? I seen some people that, I thought were demon-possessed, and it seems like they have extraordinary strength, and you don't want to get in their way. What do you want with us, Son of God? They shouted. Have you come to torture us before the appointed time? Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. Now, if you know anything about the culture, again, the Jewish culture, what are pigs? They were unclean, right? In fact, they were like, stay away from those things, right? And you couldn't eat them. Now, today we seem to enjoy pork, some of you, bacon especially, right? We like that when we have our feast and we have pigs, but according to the Levitical law, the Jewish people, the Hebrew people could not eat pig because they were unclean. The demons begged Jesus, if you drive us out, send us in the herd of pigs. Now, it might be strange to your mind that demons would want to go into pigs, but you remember that's sort of on the same level, right? Unclean spiritually, going into pigs is no big deal, right? And he said, go! So they came out and went to the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town and reported all these things, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they pleaded him to leave the region. Now, why do you suppose they hear about the demon-possessed men being freed? Why would they want to get rid of Jesus? Well, it's all about the money, right? People always thinking about the money first. And their livelihood was being spent because they didn't have pigs anymore. They couldn't sell pigs for a feast. You remember what happened after that, though? The two demon-possessed men went out because they were in the same mind, and they understood that they were freed from the bondage of being demon-possessed. And they went around and spread the gospel to the people, gave testimony. You see, the time is when we are down and out, and we have been set free from our bondage. This is when we can proclaim louder than the people who have never experienced the hardship in life. It's easier for you who have been through hardship, whether it's pain, suffering, grief, whatever it is, to be able to identify with people and give testimony to what God has done in your life. Now, another story, right? You probably have sung that song when you were little growing up. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up to the sycamore tree to see what he could see. And as he, Savior, passed him by, something like, he said, Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today. So let's read that. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. Now, what's wrong with that? Well, on the surface, tax collector, yeah, IRS, right? Well, now IRS is probably not kind of looked down upon today. In fact, they want to hire more agents and they want to give them weapons, right? Today. Why would IRS need a tank? I don't know. And he was wealthy, he was rich. Well, some people kind of look down upon the rich. But who do you go for when you need some money? Somebody that has money. He wanted to see Jesus, who Jesus was, but because he was short, Now, I don't know what short means because I'm kind of tall, but sometimes I'm standing around a bunch of basketball players and they're all, over 6 feet. 6 feet, what, 7? So you can imagine, when there's a 6'7" person standing in front of me and I'm almost 6 feet, I still really be able to see, and I'm taller than most Japanese people. So he was short and could not see over the crowd, so he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree, a fig tree, to see him. And since Jesus was coming that way, so he was probably like seeing Jesus coming, and he looked over here and he saw the tree, so he ran up the tree, climbed up the tree, and now I can see. Tree, see? Oh, it rhymes. Oh, cool. When Jesus reached that spot, he looked up and he said, Zacchaeus, come down right now, immediately. I must stay at your house today. Now, what's wrong with that picture? Well, if you understand again what's going on here, the tax collector was like a thief to the people because he usually he was collecting the taxes, but he would collect more, and whatever more that he collected that he should have collected, he pocketed the money. And he says, I must stay at your house today. Now, if you can imagine Zacchaeus, who was a thief, basically, here's the Messiah saying, I want to socialize with you. I want to hang out with you. I want to hang out at your house. Now, how many of you, maybe if your house is not clean, would not invite someone to come to your house today, right? You understand what I'm saying? But there's no, Jesus didn't care what his house looked like. He says, I'm going to come and spend some time with you. Can you imagine what Zacchaeus thought? That the Messiah wants to come to my house? You see how big deal that is? If, well, I don't know if that's a good illustration. I was thinking of if President Biden said, I'm going to come and spend your house, time in your house, then you might say, no way. but somebody, like maybe, who's a person I can throw a name out there? Huh? If someone famous and someone that you like said, I'm going to come to your house, you'd be like, feeling like, oh, I'm special, right? That this famous person, was to come to my house. So he came down at once. Can you imagine? Maybe he jumped off the tree, I don't know. And he welcomed him gladly. And all the people saw this and they began to mutter. Now, okay, so these other guys, probably gossipers, right? Look at him. He is going to be guest at the sinner's house. The unworthy. Look at him. He calls himself God, the Son of God, and he's going to spend time with that heathen. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here, now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. What has happened?
Convicted.
Repentance. Come to realization in front of a holy God, knowing his sinful self, and he says, God, I surrender. You see, there's so many people out there that are doing bad stuff. But we have to have the compassion of God to reach out, and we can see a transformation taking their lives. Jesus said to him, today, salvation has come to this house because this man, too, is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the righteous people. Well, they're the lost too, right? I mean, the Pharisees, they're there, right? They're listening to Jesus saying, seek and save